Setting it up. And we're live. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to podcast 17 for Project SIP. My name is Tyler. I'm going to be the moderator tonight. I'm also joined by Jules, Charles, Kylan, and Vlad tonight. So let's get started. So one of the things I did want to talk about first is the Georgia runoffs. Everybody knows that the Senate runoffs for both seats in the Georgia Senate, for the United States Senate, I should say, are going to be out January 5th, and it's about coming due to time to register to vote for January 5th. I think that is coming up on the 7th, next Monday. So if you live out in Georgia, get out there and make sure you're registered and get out there and vote. Now, here in California, we've had a lot of news come out today about COVID, but I do want to start with some facts. So today, as of right now, there was just over 2,700 people that passed away due to COVID-related illness. That is just 200 fewer people than what had passed away in 9/11 back in 2001 to just today. And we've been dealing with this every day for days at a time. So we're catching up very quickly. 113 people passed away here in California. Also nationwide, there's about 210,000 cases of people that tested positive. That's 18,000 people just here in California. So these are huge numbers. There's a large spike going on right now. We've kind of gone through a couple waves. We haven't necessarily gotten rid of everything, and you can't call this another wave. This is more like a surge of the original wave that we had. But here nationwide, there's 101,000 people that are currently hospitalized with COVID. So today, here in our state of California, Gavin Newsom, the governor, added another layer to the COVID restrictions and the stay-at-home orders. He made a regional stay-at-home order to where if your region, which is multiple counties, fell below 15% ICU capacity, then basically everything gets shut down in your region for 3 weeks. At the very minimum, it could be longer. They start reevaluating after a month. Jules, do you feel like that was the right decisions to go through at this time so far into our COVID pandemic?
Oh man, it's so severe. It's very severe. I can't disagree with it. Honestly, it feels like I feel like we've kind of hit this normalization period where we're all sort of like living with this thing, and so now we all feel sort of in a way comfortable with it, which is weird. But it's sort of become our within like our psychology, like what we have to do. Like it's almost going to be weird when I can go to the store without a mask. I'm probably going to feel a little bit naked without it, but yeah, it feels severe, but I think it's probably necessary because by the numbers we're probably way worse. We in fact are way worse off than we were in March. I mean, it's become a pretty big deal, and I think people's reactions negatively to it are just because they've pushed it to a place in their mind where it's something they just sort of had to acknowledge but not act on it, and I think that's why everybody's sort of like freaking out about how severe the rules are, but the rules are more severe because the cases are more severe.
Yeah, it is very severe. People are freaking out, but Vlad, do you feel like people are freaking out more or less than they were in March when everything kind of started off?
To be perfectly honest with you, Tyler, I think people are freaking out less. And I think that's part of the problem as well. I think if you look back into what was happening in March, we really had like the bulk and the concentration of all the the deaths and the cases were happening in primarily kind of in New York City. Like New York City was on full lockdown, everything was going haywire there. Now the situation's a little different, where the cases aren't concentrated in one area, one geographic area. So when you see these numbers, when you see like, over 2,000 deaths in a day, which is, as you said, it's approaching the number that we had on 9/11. It's pretty close to the number that we had on, during Pearl Harbor, which is, a day that'll live in infamy and also never forget. But now you've got the same number of deaths, but it's spread out across a much wider geographic area. So it's not as shocking for people when they see those statistics. So I personally think people are freaking out less. And I actually think right now, in terms of how kind of the effect that it's had on various populations across the country, we should be freaking out probably more than less. Especially you look at like North Dakota, where 1 out of every 800 people has died. It's pretty shocking. So
Yeah, it is very shocking. I mean, it brought up North Dakota, South Dakota. The positivity rates in South Dakota, for instance, are I think I saw something about 60%. So
Mhm.
that is a huge amount of people that potentially could have COVID. There are some, in some ways you can look at it in LA County where Jules is at, almost 1 out of every 200 people have gotten COVID down there this year. So that's a huge amount of people if you think about the population that's living down there. But Charles, how is kind of the lockdowns and the freak out sessions that we've all been hearing about, or lack thereof, have been affecting you?
Uh, for me, I work at a hospital, so being locked down is okay with me because I see the. Actually, I feel that it should have been locked down 2 weeks ago when it first started, because before Thanksgiving, that way, a lot that's going to come up in the next 2 weeks wouldn't be as severe. I started seeing it Sunday night on the job when they had to transfer patients from Sacramento to our hospital with COVID because they didn't have the nurses to take care of them. So I'm not sure it wasn't too late for him to do it. You know, as for me personally, I've been on lockdown over a year because my wife had to isolate to get surgery in December of last year, and it didn't go right. So she was scheduled to come back again in March. And 2 weeks before her surgery, after isolating, we went in COVID. So I've been in COVID for quite a long time, on lockdown. So it doesn't even bother me. Kylan comes by, we do some barbecuing, and he's about the only one that comes to the house besides him. Anybody else, they do drive-by. We take out whatever they want, or they come on in. But I'm okay. My dog, I got a new dog, and he knows one person, Kylan. So
So, Charles, you bring up a very good point, indirectly, that I did want to cover at some point tonight, was about COVID bubbles. So obviously Charles and Kylan are in the same bubble because they go and barbecue together. So um, when most people think they have 4 or 5, maybe at most 10 people in their bubble, that is in their bubble, by themselves. And then other people can have more people in that bubble. So we really have not a bubble of 10 people. It's more of like 100 or 1,000 people
exactly.
at that point. So do you think, Kylan, do you think that kind of uh, is helping the spread right now? Is that people think that they have a bubble and it's not really as small of a bubble as they think?
No, I think that this is spreading because of the abject selfishness and stupidity of the collective American people. I think this is spreading because that, until January 20th, we have a president and a complicit Republican Party that has totally politicized the pandemic. And if you wear a mask, you're weak and you're a sheep, and it's just the flu, and all these other half-assed conspiracy theories. And it pisses me off because people are out there dying, people are out there getting sick by the hundreds of thousands now. There's no end in sight. It's a wildfire that's spreading to every part of the country. And even right now, even people who are down to their last breath, who are about to die, unfortunately, if you look at some people in South Dakota and other parts of middle America, they're down to their last dying breaths. And when the doctor asks them, do you want to call your family? Do you want to FaceTime your family? Their last breath is to say, I can't believe this. It's still not real. It's not the flu. And then they die. It's been so ingrained in half of the American people that this isn't real. And it's a damn shame because it's costing lives. And I put this at the feet of the President of the United States, and I put this at the feet of cult-like followers who don't believe in science, who don't believe in reality, who are killing themselves and are killing others who do believe in science and reality and empirical facts. And it pisses me off. And I hate the fact that people are dying that shouldn't be dying. And that's my thought about that.
Yeah, it really is painful when this can be prevented. We can all do more to help each other. It's kind of like the human species is kind of like, we've gotten this far because we worked together and protected the other person in our tribe, I guess you can say. And people are now not protecting each other. They're only thinking about themselves. And when you divide people like that, it makes us all a little less safe. And this is one of those reasons for that. So right now we have a poll up in our comment section. We have it saying, do you think that the new California restrictions are too severe? And we have 83% of our viewers that think that it is not too severe. So that's most of you who live here in California actually think that this is the right thing to do, which is kind of surprising to me. I thought it would be a little bit less, but that's great. That's great. We do need to do our part, as I said. Now, one thing that I did want to throw a question back at Kylan about is that the CDC came out with a study about a month or two ago about how much more likely you are to be hospitalized with COVID if you are of American Indian descent, of Native American descent, of Latino or Hispanic descent, or African American or Black descent. If you are Native American, you have over a 5-time more likelihood of being hospitalized with COVID. If you are African American, Black, or Latino, you are 4 times more likely to get COVID and have it become a hospitalization. How do you, why do you think that is?
Well, I think these are primarily structural. I think when you look at Native Americans, when you look at the Latino community, when you look at the African American community, these are 3 communities that have basically over the course of American history been screwed by the American system. Native Americans have been screwed out of their land, put on reservations that don't have enough clean water, that don't have enough quality housing, and they're all spread together without the resources to have health care and be healthy. When you look at Latin American and African Americans, we've typically have not had enough access to quality health care, quality housing, quality infrastructure, quality community resources. And by a byproduct of that is we have increased risk for COVID. And that comes from not having an access to enough healthy food or vitamins to immunize ourselves, to be healthy. And so it's by design. It's been by design. We have African Americans, Latinos, Native Americans have had poor educational systems where we aren't being able to be educated to make sound decisions when it comes to our health personally and community wise. And so, I think these are big reasons why these things aren't happening, why these types of issues are within primarily lower income persons of color communities. And it's very sad. It's entirely preventable. And what angers me is it's purely by design. It is a systematic and systemic issue why persons of color are more susceptible for COVID, are more susceptible to death, are more susceptible to hospitalization, are more susceptible to infection. It's very unfortunate.
So, Charles, Kylan brings up a really good point about access to healthcare, but that's probably not the only case because of where you work. What would be another reason why more people of color would be affected by COVID?
Basically, I see the condensation of the people, lower housing projects. They have to go in the areas where there's always a lot of people. You got to go stand and when you go to get medical care, you're going to the clinics. There's 50, 100, 200 people there, and that's the biggest thing that I see is even with the veterans that I see coming in, they're in condensed areas. They're in different programs. They come in and they do what they need to do. You got people that's living on the streets, then they're going in the store where you're going in that same neighborhood, and the condensation of this neighborhood causes a lot of what we're having at right now. And that's not just the Black or Latino, it's all the areas. Then you also have to play in the alcohol and drug situation because people are sharing those things and they have no mindset of, well, I can get sick by sharing this joint with that person. Now that it's legal, it's even more so here in California. So, it's a combination of a lot of things, but mostly it's the housing projects, the areas that they live in, where there's quite a few drug trafficking and everything else, prostitution, and the access to better things is null and void. So, as far as your kids, you got to take them to school. You might have to get on a bus with 50 people to take your kid to school. So, there's a lot plays into it. It's not just that people don't want to do better. Some of them just can't do better.
So, hey, Charles, another great point. It is not just necessarily people of color. It's also more of an income thing. So, Vlad, do you agree that it could be more of a class issue than a people of color or a race issue?
I do. I also think, judging from like the kind of class issue aspect of it, I think also the inability of a lot of people in those communities as well to be able to shelter in place actually and be able to work remotely. And I think that's, you get a lot of like white collar, workers and a lot of that who are able to do that because they have, a lot of their work is office work and you can get a laptop, you can do it at home. But a lot of folks in those communities don't have that option, because many of them do work in retail and in grocery stores and in areas that do tend to be a little bit more where you do tend to be a little bit more susceptible to infection. So I think that also kind of plays a role in it. And a lot of these companies, they're not providing sufficient like PPE, they might not be disinfecting properly. And so these folks who are in constant contact with each other and with the public are, catching the virus and then in turn spreading it throughout their community and out.
Yeah. It's a little bit more difficult when you have to work at a service job. That was one of the things that this study from the CDC came up with, was the fact that obviously we talked about access to healthcare. We've talked about how people work in service industry kinds of jobs, and that's generally people with lower incomes. Another thing that they kind of put out there was about multi-generational housing. So people that not only just have this generation, but their parents, their parents' parents, and so on and so forth. The last thing was about comorbidities. Jules, I wanted to ask you about that. Do you think that is a big player in this?
I'm sorry. Is say that again? Is
The comorbidities, meaning like, hey, yeah, you get COVID, but you also have heart disease, you have cardiovascular problems, you have diabetes, you're overweight, things like that.
right. So is that a big problem? I mean, of course. I mean, we're also in flu season now too. So now we're gonna be doubling up on diseases. You know, like if you have the flu and then you also get COVID. I mean, I feel like you're in a pretty bad situation. And if you have any underlying diseases like you know, if you're asthmatic, if you're overweight, if you've got diabetes, as you said, if you have immune deficiencies in any way, you get one and then you get the other, it's going to be terrible. I think we're in for a pretty bad winter as far as multiple diseases affecting individuals all at once. It's not good.
No, it is not for sure. And, you know, when we have the flu season going on at the same time, and if you contract the flu like you would in every year, your body tries to fight it off, and then it can't fight off that and a COVID infection at the same time. It makes it very difficult. But right now we have a poll up in our comment section right now, asking our viewers, asking you guys, are you more worried about COVID now than you were in March? 80% of you said you are more worried about it. That's a good thing that we have more awareness, and we all are more aware that this is actually more of an issue than it was before. Now, does that kind of come down to testing though, for anybody? Like, does anybody think that the testing that we have is making it more of an issue numbers wise?
Well, you know, the more testing you do, the more cases you have. So, you know, I honestly think that one of the issues is that we're not doing enough quality testing, that we still don't have the amount of testing that we need. I think if you take the current daily caseload, as far as new infections, I think you can add at least 15 to 20% to that's going undiagnosed, because there's no apparatus to have a successful testing regime. If you look at South Korea, if you look at Wuhan, China, and other provinces in China, they were able to successfully, you know, get this virus tamped down quickly because they had a very robust testing and contact tracing apparatus. And in our country, we have where half of the country still believes that the virus doesn't even exist and that it's fake. So you're not going to have that type of testing and contact tracing apparatus. I mean, if you look at the NFL, part of the Baltimore Ravens' current outbreak was because they had a strength and conditioning coach that did not wear his mask and took off his contact tracer, and therefore the whole team got infected, damn near. So this is from professional sports teams, from regular everyday Americans. We are not able to currently have the quality testing and contact tracing to get this under control. Only a vaccine and having enough people take it for there to be immunity are we going to get through this. The collective stupidity of the people of the United States of America and the collective selfishness is not going to allow this pandemic to be tamped down. Only when enough people take a vaccine. We are past the point of no return. The train has left the station. There is no putting this genie back in the bottle.
Now, you brought up a really good point about sports. We have had a lot of sports that have come back during the pandemic, not just here in the United States, but all across the world. I read something earlier in the week that the outbreak that the Baltimore Ravens had was the largest professional sports COVID outbreak in the world. And that's huge. That's huge. That tells you that in all other major American sports, European sports, Asian sports, oceanic sports, South American sports, they didn't have 25 people or more, because it's 25 players, and then all the coaching staff that was also affected at one time. And the NFL isn't really, they're not really taking it as seriously as other people think that it should.
Well, you have to understand, Tyler, the NFL is owned by a bunch of rich, white Trump-supporting billionaires. So of course they're going to do Trump-supporting, things where they don't believe in science, where they're going to discount the protocol, and where they're going to put their workers at risk, because honestly, they're just cattle. They're just ways for them to enrich themselves. So it's actually not very surprising. The rest of the world looks at us in horror that we're a bunch of Neanderthals. Because the rest of the world believes in science. They believe in empirical facts. I mean, you look at all across the world, they're not having the same issues we're having. They're not having the same death toll. They're not having the same infection rates because they believe in science and they believe in facts, where they contract trace and test and have national unity, where everybody feels it's their duty to protect their neighbor and protect their country. Whereas in the United States, our rugged individualism is actually doing us no favors. It's actually helping us.
Now, you bring up that point, in especially Europe, in the UK, they just recently had a lockdown that they had for, I think, the last 3 weeks. I can't say that everybody was happy about it, for sure. There was a lot of people grumbling about it, but they went and did it, and it came from the top down. Their government had come up with that lockdown and mandated it nationwide there. They just came out of that lockdown, and their surge that they were having, that wave that they were having, was stamped down. But
the difference, though.
Go ahead, Charles.
The difference, though, is that they're taking care of their people as they lock down, whereas $1,200 over 8 months, what's that going to do for a family? See, that's the difference between what we're doing and what they're doing. We're putting more value on a dollar than we are on people's lives. And that is my biggest beef with this whole thing.
That is a big deal. But I definitely want to ask about contact tracing, because Kylan brought that up numerous times, and I wanted to go to Jules about it, because contact tracing here in the United States it's very rough. It depends on where you live. And then it's very hard to continue down the line to make sure everybody gets contacted. But how do you feel about it right now, Jules?
Well, I feel like not enough people are opting into it, but here I want everybody to see this. This is going to be backwards. Let me flip my screen really fast. Okay, so on your iPhone is this thing. It says exposure notifications. You have to opt into it. It will contact trace for you. It'll send all that information, but it's not turned on automatically. You have to turn that on. Everybody who has an iPhone, I'm sure there's a similar function on Android now, but with the latest update on iPhone, turn that shit on. It'll help you out in terms of your overall health if you come in contact with somebody who tests positive. If you do end up testing positive, make sure you go onto that function and share. There's a function there. It says share COVID-19 diagnosis. So there you can see it. Okay, so share that shit. You get diagnosed, you will be it'll send that information to the system, and it'll send it to anybody who was within a certain amount of distance from you. That's going to be important in terms of getting contact tracing going, making sure that it's not just community spread, and hopefully uh, decreasing the likelihood that you will come in contact with somebody who is COVID positive.
Now, Jules, you bring up a great point. The tech industries, Google, or at least Google and Apple, have come up with apps like the exposure notification to be able to help contact tracing in jurisdictions that allow it. There, for the longest time, it was not available in most of the United States. The regional jurisdictions, the states, had to opt into it, and then everybody has to opt into it from that point. While
Right.
places such as New Zealand, they have an app that everybody can download and do it.
Yeah,
And you technically opt into it at that point, but at least it was available at, again, the federal level and going
I
from
mean,
there.
and here's the biggest issue that I have with that is I discovered that this morning. I had no idea it was there. Nobody said anything. It wasn't reported on any major news site that I saw. It was literally just something I went to my settings to check something completely different. And I was like, oh, what the hell is this?
Well,
And then I was like, oh, wow, okay, that's there. So everybody should know about this. But I found out of it because I accidentally came upon it. And I think that's a big issue.
So
I just wanna spread the word on it.
awareness totally is a big issue for that. The tech firms with Apple and Google did announce that with their new operating systems that they were going to do that.
They announced it.
They
but
announced it, and it's always been there. California just turned on their notifications last Sunday.
Yeah.
So
And that's ridiculous because I mean, this has been here since March, well, earlier, December, January, February, somewhere in there, right? So, like, why did it take practically a year for this to happen? I mean, the pandemic was initiated in January, in February, and then we locked down in March, and this is not hard software to create. It's not exactly like it's not anything new. They could have implemented this thing long ago, and they didn't. And so that's a frustration for me. But I just want everybody to know, because I discovered it today. I don't think a lot of people know that it's there. But
and it's something you can opt into, and so people sometimes can worry about privacy with it. It's not giving out your data to everybody. It's using your Bluetooth and Wi-Fi, and if it comes in contact with somebody who had COVID, it'll just let you know that you could have been exposed to it. It's not saying, hey,
right.
person A or person B has COVID, you were exposed to them.
It's just saying
hey,
you were in proximity. But
Yes.
But it only works well if people know it exists, and it should be turned on automatically. It shouldn't just be something you have to click on it to say, oh yeah.
You would think it would be better to do that, but to get people's buy-in, it has to be opt-in. You can't just force it.
Yeah, but for the sake of public health, can't we like forgive a little bit of like choice for that, and for the sake of millions of people not dying?
But I understand that could be a slippery slope. Now that kind of goes into one of the questions I was going to ask later. Is go ahead, Vlad.
Tyler, I was going to say something in response to Jules on that point. So if you were to actually activate it and have this feature be automatically turned on everybody's cell phones, that's all well and good. The problem is if you don't do a mass information campaign to let people know that this feature actually exists, people not going on there and sharing their their diagnosis or their positive status defeats the purpose of having the system of notifications out there, because then there's nothing to notify you of. So that's kind of the issue as well. Like there wasn't a good enough campaign to let people know that even this feature even existed, because honestly, Jules, I didn't even know about it until you just said it. But if they were to just drop this onto everybody's phones turned on, it doesn't solve the problem, because people still have no idea that it's even there. Like, you have to know it's there, but you have to be willing to participate in that system if it's there in order for it to be effective.
Right. So, but if Apple had maybe, I mean, they can push notifications onto your phone if they want
Sure.
to, just
Oh, absolutely.
just like a Amber Alert. It's a
Mhm.
push notification that's literally I have no choice.
Yeah.
It's gonna go on my phone no matter what,
Oh, I know.
right? Because it's a matter of human life being in danger.
Well, it's public
Right.
safety, and
So even if it's something you have to opt into, maybe
Mhm.
just push a notification onto my phone saying, "Hey, this is here. You should opt into that."
I don't disagree with you. I think it should have happened. I think the problem is, even you get that push notification, there's still going to be a gigantic subset of the
Sure,
population that is
but
not going to
there's
participate. Just like that one family who tested positive and then tried to fly to Hawaii, and now they're all facing charges.
You took it away from me, Vlad. I was going
Sorry,
to ask
I'm
about
sorry.
that.
Well, go ahead and ask.
Because I mean, because with that particular case, those were people who live in Hawaii. They were here in California. The thing about going to Hawaii is that you have to test before you go.
Mhm.
Their test came back positive. They went ahead and got on the plane anyway and arrived in Hawaii and were arrested for reckless endangerment in Hawaii. Is that something that we should be doing?
Yes.
I want to ask Kylan.
Oh, go ahead, Colin.
Absolutely, yes. For a country that tries to call themselves center right and try to pride themselves on personal responsibility, there sure as shit hasn't been any personal responsibility over these last 9 months. And I think it's about high damn time there needs to be some personal responsibility, because people are sure being irresponsible, selfish, and stupid, costing other innocent people's lives. Maybe it's time they have that they gotta have some skin in the game. There needs to be consequences. They need to be arrested. They need to be held civilly liable. They need to be sued. They need to be punished. Because until there's consequences, and again, I bring this back to the current head of our government, when his cult and other people see that the president of the United States has absolutely no accountability, can break laws, can flout laws, can misinform, can lie, can cheat, can steal, can destroy democracy, it's going to filter down to those that believe in the same thing and support him. I have no accountability. I can do what I want. I'm an American. I'm a real American. I'm a patriot, and nobody's going to tell me what to do come hell or high water. Well, you know what? If you want to be that way, you know what? It's time to pay the piper. There needs to be accountability for that, because we're not just talking about taxes. We're not talking about that you don't want to do this, that you don't want to pay for that. We're talking about lives, people that are in the ground getting cremated, right? Dying alone, and they're never coming back. All right, they're never coming back. That's the accountability that the people that they're infecting are facing. They're either dead or they may suffer for the rest of their life. They may not be able to, they may only have 50% of their lung capacity the rest of their life. They may have emotional issues the rest of their life. They may have mental issues the rest of their life. Who's looking out for those people?
That
Hey, I want to add on to that.
Go ahead, Charles.
Yeah, I want to add on to that. When this first started, 46 minus 1 holler about, well, it's every state's responsibility. Soon as the governor of New York started doing what he did, I don't think we ought to do that. California, Hawaii, and New York, New Jersey, they stood fast on that. And you see what happened when they went over there? Even though they were citizens of Hawaii, they had to be held accountable. That's the problem with the United States. We're not united. All we do is point fingers at each other and don't be accountable. And that's bullshit. And I'm in the fight, so I know. I leave my house 3 nights a week to go to work, and that's about it besides the grocery store. Because I see and I know. And for that couple to get on that plane with 100, 125 other people, that's fucking bullshit.
Yep.
That is a very eloquent way of putting it there, Charles. Jules, do you think the same way as Charles and Kylan.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I think we need to have accountability. I think for the sake of public health, we need to, you know, be willing to sacrifice a few things for a short period of time. That does not mean it's a martial law. That does not mean it's the government trying to take over. It doesn't mean that we're letting the government have too much power. No, it means that the government is there in order to protect its citizens. That is why we have a government. It's not why we don't have an anarchist system. It's why we don't have a communistic system. It's why we have the system we have. Is the government exists there to do to represent us as people, and part of that representation means to think about the overall quality of life for every citizen in America. So if the government decides like, yes, we're going to opt you in automatically to this program, or yes, we're going to, put these restrictions down so other people don't die. It's not about individualism. It's about the collective, we can't think of ourselves as a country of individuals. We are a country of over an umbrella government that exists in order to help us and keep us safe and healthy. If we, otherwise, what's the point of having a government? And the government is there to do that. So
Jules, doesn't that sound an awful lot like communism?
No,
I
it
was,
does not.
I
It
was
does not sound a lot like communism. The government is a
I'm
different
just
entity from
I
the
know.
people. The people not being, a collective control, right?
Hmm.
That's communism.
That's
It would be
teetering. That's so close.
Is it teetering? No, it's not. The government exists to care for the people that it governs. Period.
that is yes and no. There's a certain limit to that. Now, whenever I hear a lot of what has been said over the last couple of minutes, I go back to kind of what I started the podcast with, September 11th, 2001, and what people were talking about 19 years ago. And how, yes, it's okay for us to give up some liberties right now to do more for the country. It's better for the country. So
can I give an example really quick?
Wait 1 moment, because we said temporarily that was going to be the case, and has it been temporary with the Patriot
Well,
Act?
it would have been temporary if they had done anything competent whatsoever
But if you give the government any leadway, it will be permanent. Same thing with taxes. If you sign up for taxes, if you sign up for taxes, yeah. If you vote,
there's no
for taxes,
signing up for taxes. Taxes are a given.
Well, here in California, you can vote.
You can vote for tax increases sometimes.
Yeah.
Oh sure.
Yeah,
You can vote for tax increases, but you can't vote for taxes in general. If I could vote to not pay taxes.
No, you can't vote
Why
to just
not?
pay taxes.
I don't want to pay these anymore. Like fuck that. No.
But if you vote for a tax increase because of a public service or whatever, basically they can get it to where it's permanent, and you're opening up a door. Can we open up that box, that Pandora's box, and be able to close it up again? Now,
absolutely, we can. We've done it before, and we can do it again. We did it during World War II, during the Great Depression. We rationed food, we rationed bread, we rationed all this stuff. It was a temporary thing, and it was a government-induced idea. It's like, we're going to ration this stuff, and you're going to have to deal with it. And it was not a permanent thing. We came back, and it was for the good of society. We even during wartime, we commissioned people to do a specific thing. Like, you're going to have to do this specific thing. You're going to have to rivet these boats. You're going to have to do all this stuff for the good of the nation, for the good of the war effort. It wasn't permanent. It was just a temporary thing, and it was for the good of what we saw as the humankind. And ultimately it was. And did it stay? No, it disappeared. World War II ended, and we're like, cool, we don't need to do this shit anymore. So why is this any different?
So go ahead.
The reason why it's different, so is number one, when we talk about World War II, when we talk about all of these things, hell, when we talk about, 19 years ago with 9/11, the country did rally together. There was a patriotic spirit. But you know what? If World War II or 9/11 happened now, hell, we have the equivalent of one 9/11 every damn day right now with COVID deaths, and nobody bats an eye. I don't have the confidence that the country can rally together like we used to. Nobody's gonna. These selfish assholes now aren't gonna ration any food. They can't even ration toilet paper and paper towels. You think they're gonna ration food? Come on, man.
It's true.
No, and I'm not even trying to say that to just demean you, but people are stupid, selfish assholes. That's the
Right,
bottom
but
line.
it's the role
They
of the
don't have
government
that
to say, like,
patriotic spirit
stop
anymore.
doing that.
They don't have that patriotic spirit before. If planes crash into two towers right now, half the country would say that it was an inside job, that it was fake, that it was doctored. Because you know what? We have one modern political party that is now the party of QAnon and conspiracy theory and batshit crazy and tinfoil hat.
But
There's two separate realities right now. And how can you rally together in any type of unified national thing when you have half the country that can't even believe that the sky is blue?
now, before I go to Vlad, because I have a question for him, I do want to say the thing about the visual impact of two towers and the Pentagon and the plane that went down in Pennsylvania is that it happened once. As you said, Kylan, we are having a 9/11 style death crisis every day. And this kind of goes back to what I was asking about earlier. Are we just desensitized? And does that make it to where people are just, when it happened once, you saw it, you could see the replay of it, and you felt it. You felt that same emotion. Now we're seeing all the deaths happen, but it's not necessarily right directly beside me. It's not me itself. It's not affecting me at this exact moment, except for my government telling me I can't do things because of it. That's kind of where people are feeling right now with that, I guess you could say, alternative reality. I don't want to say I believe that everybody is just inherently unintelligent or anything. I just believe that that's kind of what people are feeling.
That's a great point. I'm not going to say that everybody is unintelligent, but I will say a majority of people are selfish and self-centered, and so it doesn't necessarily mean that they're dumb. There are some people that are very smart, but there are people that are very smart and very selfish that don't give a damn about anybody but themselves and in their line of sight. A lot of these people, when you hear the interviews that they do, they still justify their own family dying. Yeah, my mom died, maybe she died of COVID. I don't think she died of COVID. They are cult, because they don't even care that their own family member died. They're denying that their family died of what they died of. You can't square that. How can you square with that?
So Vlad, let's see how you feel about that communistic discussion that we just had.
So I actually, I had a response to to what Jules said, and there have been times throughout American history where we have kind of suspended civil liberties for the greater good, and it did, there were things that happened during World War II. Some were positive, some were horrible. When we suspended the civil liberties of an entire group of folks of Japanese national origin. But there was also, there's been times during wartime when, we've had citizens conscripted into the army and stuff like that, and there have been temporary. Can we do something like that now in this, with this crisis? Yes, but so at those times we did it, and we had administrations, we had people in government who weren't so corrupt and power hungry that they would actually be willing to give back some of that power and some of that control. Right now, in today's time, we have one political party that has unfortunately shifted really, really close to what I believe is totalitarianism. And if you were to give up civil liberties to a group of people like that, and a group of people who currently run Congress, I should say the Senate, not necessarily the House, then you would be hard pressed to kind of get some of those civil liberties back. And I think that's what happened after 9/11 with the Patriot Act and with the Homeland Security spying, and and why Snowden became such a big thing, is that those things were supposed to be temporary, and it just kept on getting reauthorized and reauthorized and reauthorized. So like in the past we've been able to do it. Currently, I think without a drastic shift in what's really happening in the country, and some segment of the country's like open embrace of totalitarianism, I don't think we can do that now. Does it need to happen? Yeah, it does, because it's really the only way we're going to get through this. But would I feel comfortable with that type of situation really going on, given who's in control? I don't know.
So I do want to put this out here. We have a poll in our comment section where we do polls all the time, and I've mentioned a couple of them tonight. For the sake of public health, would you be willing to give up some of your privacy for individual rights? This is directly involved with this discussion that we're having right now. 80% of our viewers would say yes right now. Is that kind of what you guys would think it would be?
It is, because we're talking about privacy, and we live in a digital age where there is already so much information about you that's out there. So what's one more thing? I think that doesn't surprise me one bit. I think if you were to ask people, would you give up not privacy, but give up some of your civil liberties, you might get a different answer.
That's a good distinction there, Vlad. Charles, do you think we should be giving up our individual rights or civil liberties for the greater good?
Well, to a point, but right now I wouldn't give up anything because I know we wouldn't get any of it back with the people that's in office. Now on January 20th, Biden is going to do some things. He's going to make it mandatory for some of these companies to make PPE. See, this could have been done in March instead of trying to go take the planes that came into these states that were ordering it and the government going and taking it from them. See, Trump had the authority at that time to have some of these companies open up their shop and make these things so we wouldn't be so dependent on China. But it seems to me like he's trying to make sure that they made more money than the people here in America. You talk about job security. We could have put a bunch of people to work making PPE. But instead, he told every governor to get it on your own. See, I go back to that. See, when
He
the
didn't necessarily.
head-
I was going to say,
Okay.
he didn't necessarily say every governor needed to get it on their own. He said that
every state.
every state that was a democratically run state would have to
Right.
get it themselves. He didn't necessarily, well, okay, let me preface this. He didn't say that in those terms necessarily, but he basically said that when he said he wasn't going to help out Andrew Cuomo in New York. He
Right.
wasn't going to
And
help out
California.
he wasn't going to help out California. He wasn't going to help out Illinois. He wasn't going to help out Massachusetts,
Tennessee,
Michigan, all those states, Wisconsin. But he was going to be okay with helping Maryland. Maryland's okay. Texas, oh, you're fine. Oh, Florida, you're fine too. We're going to help you out. We're going to make sure you get what you need. Because
But the way that he got it was to go to those states that were ordering it from China, getting it sent over here, and taking it from the planes that were delivering it to those states. See, and then he'd take it and give it to the red states, as he said. And that's the BS that we lack leadership. That's where I come in at. And I'm a federal employee, so we have quite a bit of that stuff. But Newsom got it for us because it was required.
Now, everybody might have a couple feelings about Gavin Newsom, but and especially his response on COVID. But I definitely feel like he has at least done something. But um, Kylan, do you have the same kind of feeling that I have on that? Like he's at least doing something.
I do. Newsom is tricky, and there's also some news came out today that somebody close to Newsom just got busted for like sex trafficking or something crazy like that. Um, you know, Newsom is definitely he's lost some luster, and I think some of that has been by his own actions or by his own, by being tone deaf in a couple things. But Gavin Newsom does believe in science. Gavin Newsom did try to take measures to keep Californians safe. He tried to balance that with the needs of businesses. You know, I I think overall, I mean, I think he's done what he can. There's also a point, a portion of our population that doesn't believe in COVID, that doesn't want to do any more stay-at-home orders. A lot of them are either up north or down in Jules area of the woods and Huntington Beach and and everything like that. But I think he's doing the best that he can. Um, you know, Jules brought up a good point. At the end of the day, this is only going to be as successful as we can, coming together. And one thing that we don't do is coming together. Again, I preface this that we can't even have unity to believe in the same reality, to believe on the same set of basic facts. So it's hard to unify and have a national spirit. Um, and you brought up one point too that Vlad and Jews were talking about on the whole communism authoritarian front. I wish it was the government. It's not even the government that's actually trying to be authoritarian. Aside from the current president, but it's half the voting base. When you have shitheads like Michael Flynn saying that there needs to be martial law and the Constitution needs to be suspended to hold a new election, when you have a majority of Trump voters that said that they would accept a dictator as long as it's Donald J. Trump, when they're okay with imprisoning other United States citizens that don't believe what you believe, when you have, Joe DeGeneva saying that Chris Krebs need to be drawn and quartered and taken out at dawn and shot dead, when you have these type of things, when you have Brad Raffensperger and that other guy in Georgia going out doing press conferences saying that this has to stop, that people are getting nooses saying that they're going to get hung for treason for just simply counting votes and doing their job, for all of these assholes talking about Antifa and the radical left. Last time I checked, I haven't seen any Antifa or radical left or Democrats talking about hanging anybody or drawing and quartering anybody or suspending the Constitution or declaring martial law. Has anybody talked about declaring martial law on Texas? One of the COVID hotspots where people are dying, where they have no health care, where they have the highest rate of obesity. Nobody talks about that. But you want to talk about, California is such a shithole country, such a shithole state. Like I can go on and on, but the only people talking about authoritarianism are a lot of the people on the conservative right when they're talking about, authoritarianism and communism and, totalitarianism. Democrats just want health care and a living wage, and housing for people, and that maybe people shouldn't be destitute and dying on the ground, starving and dead. If that's radical commie, then goddamn it, I'm a radical commie, and other people can kiss my ass.
There's the mic drop. Now, so since we brought up Gavin Newsom and how he's faring, Jules, what do you think about Gavin and how he's doing?
Oh man, I have so many conflicted feelings about Gavin. Okay, on one hand, he's very, there's something very slimy about him in a very traditional political way. In that he just seems kind of like a slimy politician. Maybe it's his hair, maybe it's the way he talks. I don't know, but he does not seem to be as above forth as I would like him to be. There was a thing with the French Laundry where he did follow the protocols, but it seemed like it was like, why would you do that in the first place? Like, just if you're gonna set these rules, why don't you follow them to the T instead of sort of sliding through these loopholes that you kind of created for yourself? So that is bothersome. I feel like he's been vying for that presidential electorate, and I think he's kind of lost that. Honestly, I think overall, in terms of COVID, he's done fine. He's been pretty good overall as far as his response to COVID, his response to the pandemic. He's done pretty good. In terms of his other things, like homelessness, which was something he campaigned on, he's failed spectacularly. So, I mean, I don't want to get into that because that's an entirely different issue, but he's really not done anything towards that. So high marks for COVID, low marks for like in terms of everything else. So I
Yeah.
don't know, I have
Now-
very mixed feelings about him.
Well, do you feel like he has had the opportunity to do so because of
Oh yeah, no, I feel like
pandemic?
he's the governor of California and that he does have plenty of opportunity to do something about the homeless crisis in California, which is immense. And granted, not entirely California's fault because we have had homeless literally shipped in from Nevada and Utah and Arizona. They've literally shipped in homeless because they're like, California will take care of you. And that is true. And you could look, I could state sources on that. I can post them. If
Yeah.
you want.
Now I don't want to, because I have
but-
a couple
but
questions
the
about it, but I
fact
don't want to
is,
get off
like,
subject.
That is off subject. And the fact is, he's done, I don't know, has he done anything? I can't remember the last time I heard him talk about homelessness. He's talked all about COVID and he's done fine. Good job on COVID. But in terms of like actually governing California and solving the overarching issues of California, I'm fairly disappointed. I'm fairly disappointed in terms of his optics, in terms of how he presents, has not been good. It leaves him open to criticism that maybe he doesn't deserve, but he's going to get anyway.
Yeah, he's been in office since January of 2019, so he's basically had 2 years. But one of those years has been dealing with the worst pandemic that we've had in in a century. I'm sorry. So that is one thing. Now, I do want to ask, because not only do we have Gavin Newsom going to the French Laundry, we have London Breed going to the French Laundry and having a party as well. We've had Nancy Pelosi getting her haircut in San Francisco during the first lockdown. Do we have a problem with politicians not following their own rules that they put out there for everybody, in that it's do what I say, not what I do? Vlad, do you feel that way?
Tyler, I don't feel like that's anything new.
Yeah, they're politicians.
I mean, that's been happening for, as long as politics has existed in some way, shape, or form, dating back to the Roman Empire. If you want to go, dating back to ancient Greece, if you want to go try to find the origins of Western democracy, put it in air quotes, that's always existed. It's always we know what's best for you, but don't you dare try to tell us what's best for us, because we're better than you in some ways. And I feel like, and granted, I don't think the French Laundry thing is necessarily on the same level, because they followed protocol for the most part. So, I do think it's bad optics to host, a fundraiser during the pandemic at one of the most like exclusive restaurants in the North Bay. So that is a little off. The whole Nancy Pelosi haircut thing, as soon as I saw that, the first thought in my mind was, what the fuck are you doing, lady? And that was at a point where where my wife had been cutting my hair for 4 months.
Mm-hmm.
So
now, okay, I do want to say this. It is also kind of like the Republicans are just flaunting the rules just because they can. the
They're not just
Democrats.
flaunting them, Tyler. They're rewriting them.
Well, I'm just talking about like um, in terms of COVID restrictions and things
Sure,
like that.
sure.
They're
Okay,
flaunting
fair enough.
those kinds of things, and the Democrats are saying you should be complying, but they're not necessarily doing it. So does that basically makes them hypocrites?
Mhm.
Correct.
Absolutely. And
So
I think that's also one of the things that's hurting like the national perception of the pandemic, and the reason why a lot of people aren't doing the things that they should be doing is because they're looking at these politicians who are saying like you should be doing this, and then they're doing something totally different. And the infighting between the Democrats and Republicans, where Donald Trump refused to wear a mask until I forget what, July or something, and like all this kind of craziness, like so.
okay, so uh, I hate to end it on that, but I do want to move on to another topic because that as you can tell, COVID right now, there's so much going on with that right now. But I do want to move on to kind of symptoms of the pandemic. One of those is about we've heard this back in July. We heard this back in September, and we haven't heard about it since. But the eviction cliff and how people are just going to start getting evicted from the homes because they can't afford it, because they're unemployed. One, they are sick and they can't pay, or they don't have the ability to pay because they're in the hospital, or they have medical bills that they have to pay. So I do want to throw this out there. Right now, of rented households in the country, 45% of them lost some of their income at some point during the pandemic. And that's huge. That's huge. 45% of people who rent. And we all know that most of Americans do not own their own home. I mean, even in this podcast right here, there's I think it's just me that owns the own. Oh, Kylan has his own. Okay, good. So it's half. We have half of us here. Oh, Charles does too. So, hey, look at that. Sorry, Vlad, you're the only one as of right now. That'll change soon. But as homeowners, that is daunting to me, because that means that if I had a tenant, they could potentially be paying for the mortgage on that property that I have, and they lost their income. They're not able to pay me to pay my mortgage. So then I'm going to lose the house and I lose my income as well. So Kylan, how do you think that this eviction cliff, it's going to be a revolving cycle? How do you think this is going to affect our economy in the future?
So putting on my economics hat, first of all, it's going to be an economic drag. It could potentially be the impetus to a recession. It's going to cause a glut. Some of these people, these homeowners or apartment, complex owners who are losing their tenants aren't going to be able to make their mortgage payment, and they're also going to be losing their properties. Those foreclosures are going to cause property values to go down, which will further deteriorate the economy.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the economic standpoint. It's not going to be good if we're allowed to go off of this eviction cliff. Now, from a humanitarian perspective, I am enraged and incensed, because wind the clock back to 2018, when the Republican-controlled Congress and President Donald Trump signed the tax cuts into law. $1.1 trillion, I believe, or it may have been $1.2 trillion. I may, give or take 100 billion or so. But 85% of those benefits went to the top 2%. Okay. Also, being a homeowner, and Tyler and Charles, you guys would know this too. The blue states actually got screwed in that, because we, as part of that tax reform, we lost our SALT deduction. So I know that I'm deducting a lot less, and that impacted my bottom line. New York, Rhode Island, California, all of the high tax paying states who really need that deduction lost that. So, okay, so the billionaires and the millionaires and the rich folk got their tax cuts. Nobody gave a damn about the deficit. Nobody gave a damn about, government spending at that point. But when it comes to actually helping people from getting kicked out on the street, helping people not be destitute in the street, starving, sleeping in their cars, sleeping under bridges, sleeping under freeways. When it comes to people, for the entire pandemic thus far have had to live off of $1,200 measly dollars, it enrages me. It sickens me to the pit of my stomach that this Congress and this president doesn't give a damn about the American people. They give a damn about billionaires. They give a damn about the military-industrial complex. They give a damn about the prison-industrial complex. They give a damn about big consolidated agri. They give a damn about the Republican rural farmer who've gotten more socialism over the past year than anybody's gotten. Straight cash, homie. Like Randy Moss said, straight cash, homie. Straight cash payments to all of these hardworking, patriotic farmers who think it's okay to get socialism for them, because that's pure socialism. Government handout of straight cash, But when it comes to helping people, working people, poor people, they still can't. And this latest negotiation with our centrists and moderates in Congress, they've come together to cobble together a deal that Mitch McConnell still is shitting on, that doesn't include any eviction moratorium, that doesn't include any direct cash assistance. That's what negotiation gets nowadays, leaving people still destitute. And it's disgusting.
Now, Kylan, you bring up a really good point. The Department of Health and Human Services did extend the moratorium on evictions until December 31st. So we do have until the end of this month with evictions. And hopefully that does get extended further. As you said, that will help out in terms of the economy, just overall. It helps the homeowners, it helps the renters, it helps every aspect of this economy. Now, one of the things you did bring up was the more centrist, the more moderates of both parties came together and try to get some form of a stimulus bill together. Nothing that would probably pass, but at least something to put forth and show some form of cooperation between the two parties, which is great. Any kind of cooperation at this point is great. That's more than what we had for the last even 8 to 12 years, frankly. But that only was money to help businesses, so people would have a place to go back to work to. But if they can't get to work, if they don't have a home, that is also a problem too. So one thing I did want to bring up, before the Department of Health and Human Services brought the moratorium out to December federally, lots of states had moratoriums in May, in June, in July. And so in July, you started seeing some of the spikes that we're talking about in terms of COVID. There was a study by the UCLA, UCSF, Johns Hopkins, Wake Forest, and Boston University that says that because some states had let go of their moratoriums on rental properties, that 433,000 people received COVID. That is 150,000 people in Texas alone. Mm-hmm. And that was somewhere around 10,700 extra deaths that did not need to happen, or would not have happened if we at least had the moratorium increased nationally. Mm-hmm. I do want to ask Charles, do you think that places like Texas, places like Florida, places like Michigan should have extended their moratoriums longer?
Not yes, but hell yes. I lived in Texas for 30 years, and they have this thing that if you're poor, we're going to keep you poor. They have a right to work. You can go into work one day, and when you get off work, you got your check. You're gone. So with them doing that, You think they care about you having a home? They have no love for the working people. If you're not part of the bureaucratic establishment, you know, they sell all this here. We're going to do that, do this, do that. For you to put them in office, so they come back out and tell you they're going to do it the next time, and they're going to do it the next time. You know, I know people right now that has families living together in Texas because of this. You know, we were just talking about the parents, the grandparents, the sisters, the brothers, the kids, the grandkids. You know, and it's sad because in a household of 15, let's say 15, 2 are working. The unemployment is what? Their unemployment ran out, so I think they're only getting that $300 up until the end of the year. $300 a week,
Mhm.
or maybe 6 of them. Now, yes, they can all make it on that, but that's not how we're supposed to live. That's I don't, you know, it hurts my heart to know that people have to live like that just to survive. And if they would have stayed where they had to stay, who knows how much they would have to be paying once the moratorium is over, and they say, okay, give me my money or get out. You know, that's going to be the sad part.
That is a very sad thing that people are going to definitely come across, because when the moratorium's over, they will have to pay the back rent. It's up to the landlord if they should take it in full, but most of them are already putting the process in place to go ahead and evict people
Eviction.
right after the moratoriums are over. It's going to, that's the reason why people call it a cliff, because it will be nothing and then everything. So it will be a big deal. Now, I do want to ask Vlad, if do you think that, because it's kind of a dichotomy between federal and states,
Mhm.
do you think that this should have been left up to the states, or this should have been federally mandated?
Tyler, that's an excellent question, and I personally do not believe that this is something that should have been left up to the states. I think there should have been a federal, there should have, as part of the very first um, COVID relief bill that was, in my opinion, too small and passed too late.
The
There
CARES
should
Act.
have been the CARES Act. I think it was too small. I think it was passed too late, but that's neither here nor there. I think as part of that legislation, there should have been um, rent forgiveness and a rent, like a rent freeze, and some form of forgiveness for people who were in this type of situation, so we can try to avoid this kind of cliff. Because and Tyler, you brought up an excellent point, because everyone's talking about the renters, and yes, that is absolutely horrible, but there's a lot of people out there who own these homes as well, and for them it also, because they have to make mortgage payments. And I'm not, you have a lot of like multi-million dollar corporations that own a lot of apartment buildings and own a lot of communities. Don't really care about them, honestly, at this point. Just don't give a shit anymore. What I care about is like a family who owns, who bought a second home as like as an investment to maybe hand out to their kids at some point. They're probably going to lose that, and the effect that's going to have on them and on their credit, that might affect their primary residence that they're currently living in. So that kind of snowball effect is going to happen right now. So to bring us back to the original question that you asked, Tyler, I absolutely believe this should have been a federal case. This should have been done by the federal government, should have been done by Congress, and it should be, rent should be forgiven in some way, shape, or form, because asking people, especially like if you look at California rents on a 2-bedroom apartment, you're looking, $2,500 on the low side in a lot of communities a month. So you take that and times that by 10 months, That's 25 grand that after a moratorium, somebody's going to have to shell out. And maybe that person lost their job and they haven't been working and they've been getting $450 unemployment, which is California's maximum. How are you going to pay that back? You can't. So even with a moratorium, you're still going to lose your home. So we failed.
You're just delaying the inevitable, basically,
Exactly.
at that point.
We failed. Like there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Like as American, like the American government has failed the American people, and that's tragic, and that is horribly sad, because we're gonna get, we thought we had a housing crisis in 2008, like a mortgage meltdown in 2008. What's coming in 2021 and 2022 potentially is going to be so much worse, and it's going to have a far-reaching impact. Like Donald Trump's favorite metric of the economy is the stock market, which hit, it's over 30. Dow Jones is over 30,000. That doesn't help. Like, who does that doesn't help a lot of people. Like, I mean, I invest very minimally. I know everybody I know invests very minimally. Like, no one I know owns enough stock for 30,000 point Dow Jones to make a life-changing impact. So
yeah. Now, I do want to ask Jules this, because the unemployment rate spiked in April and May, and it's come back down. It's getting back to not necessarily great numbers, but more reasonable, more attainable numbers for most people. Like that most people are still working. They're in October, the unemployment rate was about 6.6%, but last month it did jump up again to 6.9%, because there was another 600,000 plus people that started to file for unemployment. Jules, do you see unemployment being another issue, and not just the evictions, but unemployment and underemployment? Yeah.
I'm muted. I was muted. Oops. I was muted. Okay.
One at a time.
So,
One
yes,
podcast.
Yes, I do see that being a big issue, because there are many office jobs, many construction, like management jobs, things like that are office based, that are planning groups, things like that had a lot of work still left for them from the beginning of the year. They had a lot of work, and it came to August, September, October, and they started to see that their contracts were falling. They were falling off the books. Like they weren't getting as many new jobs as they used to be getting. And so they were telling their employees, oh yeah, everything's fine. And I have firsthand experience in this, by the way, because somebody very close to me lost her job for this very reason. Like they thought everything was going to be fine. And then new contracts didn't show. And new contracts didn't show because offices are closed. People are working from home. The construction is down. Design is down. Anything that involves anything sort of within that realm is suffering. And there's many hundreds of thousands of jobs in these departments, and these companies are now realizing that they can no longer be tenable as a company if they don't start laying people off. So for the beginning of the year, they were telling everybody in their staff that everything's fine, and now they're realizing everything is not fine. They're laying people off. New layoffs are coming. Office jobs are downsizing. They cannot have that many people in their office anymore. That, why have a receptionist if there's nobody in the office anymore? You don't need that position anymore. Why have all these project engineers, project managers, project assistants if there's just not enough jobs coming in, because all the other offices are closed too? So yeah, we're gonna see a huge downfall in uh, just office jobs in general, and just the commercial district in general, and the main street sort of jobs, uh, and downtown style office building jobs, because they're empty. I mean, you go to downtown LA and that shit's empty. Those buildings have nobody in them. These companies are still paying the rent, but there's nobody actually occupying the space.
And that's a
And
problem. That's a
it's a
problem everywhere.
big problem. It's a big
Now,
fucking problem.
now there are some on the right that look at that in places like New York and in San Francisco and Los Angeles, and they say, well, this is all democratically run areas, and this is the problem. They're moving people out. But Kylan, I do want to bring to you, there are ways that people look at this economy in that it's gone and then it's dropped and then it's come back up. They call that a V-shaped economy. There are some people that look at it as it's gone down and then it's split. It's gone up for some and down for others. Do you see that? They call that a K-shaped economy. Do you think of this as a V-shape or a K-shape in terms of the economy?
If I had to classify it, I would definitely classify it as a K-shaped recovery. I mean, first of all, let's just look at who is benefiting. During the course of this pandemic, if you look at the top 10 people on the Fortune 500 billionaires list, their wealth has increased by over $100 billion cumulatively. They have made out like bandits. Amazon is going to make the most money, and Jeff Bezos is going to make the most money in the history of God. Okay. So we have people that are doing just fine. You have millionaires and billionaires that are doing just fine because they're in the Cayman Islands, they're in Bermuda, they're on vacation, they're in Cabo, they're in Mexico, they're in their McMansions living just fine because they have nothing to risk, because they're rich and they'll always be rich. Okay, that's who's getting everything in this recovery. Working people are not getting anything. Our wages are still stagnant if we're working. Okay, the restaurant industry has been decimated. The movie theater industry has been decimated. The service and hospitality industry has been decimated. Low wage work has been decimated. Okay, so a lot of these unemployment numbers that somehow are rosy, those are false numbers because these are underemployment numbers. These aren't people that had their old salary. These aren't people that have full-time employment. These are people taking anything they can, scrubbing toilets, taking out the garbage to try to get something. So it's not even full employment at the rate that they were making. Okay, when you couple that, our economy is 80% plus consumer driven, demand driven. When people have no disposable income, or when people's disposable income has been severely curtailed and people are unemployed, there's going to be no demand. Nobody's going to have money to go eat in your restaurant or to eat your curbside takeout. Nobody's staying in any hotels because of COVID. Not too many people are going on vacations because they have no money. They're not pumping that money into the economy, and the economy is going to be contracting because the people that need to win aren't winning, because there is a structural recovery that's not going to the working class. And then when you couple that with the Congress that refuses to help people, that's going to exacerbate that problem. And then when you have hacks like Steven Mnuchin, who just to kneecap Joe Biden is going to try to illegally transfer $500 billion, from a loan guarantee program to help small businesses back to the Treasury that needs Mitch McConnell's approval to be redispersed, that's called kneecapping. We all know if Democrats don't win Georgia, Mitch McConnell's not going to do a damn thing to help the economy, because Mitch McConnell wants to kneecap Joe Biden, just like he kneecapped Barack Obama to try to make him be a one-term president and keep the economy as shitty as possible so Republicans can run roughshod in 2022. And that's the God to honest truth.
So, Vlad, who is winning and who needs to win, since Kylan brought it up?
You mean who's winning in this current economy?
Yes.
Bezos.
Anyone who's in the executive suite, anyone who's a quote unquote white collar worker. I think this, to kind of piggyback on what Kylan was saying, and I mean, especially billionaires are winning. That goes without saying. Bezos, Elon Musk, you name it, they're winning. They already won before this even started, but now they're just running up the score. Just to kind of bring us back to what Kylan was saying, I think this pandemic and the impact that it's had on the economy should be, and there's been many moments that should have been, but I think this should be the final nail in the coffin of supply side economics / Reaganomics. It is 100% proven that it doesn't work. Like now at this point, with Bezos making billions upon billions of dollars and everyone else struggling, like this is it. It's over. It's done. Anyone else who wants to bring in Reaganomics, they should just be slapped in the face, turned back around, told to stand in a corner because they're an idiot. So, that's kind of the end of it. And now you have businesses, you have companies that are telling their employees not to come back into the office. You've got REI that built a gigantic campus, and they announced that they were going to basically sell the building. They're not even going to use it. You've got Salesforce telling all their employees, after they built that giant tower in downtown San Francisco that says all of our employees can work remote. LinkedIn's doing it. Facebook's doing it. Google's doing it. Apple's doing it. There's so many companies out there doing it, but people aren't seeing the impact that it's going to have on everyone else, because you have subcontractors that maintain those buildings. You've got cafeterias in a lot of those buildings that are now going to be shuttered, or they're going to be cut back. Cleaning people in those buildings aren't going to have jobs. So like there's going to be a domino effect that's going to happen, that's going to kind of be going on from this. So that's my kind of long-winded answer to your question, Tyler.
So Charles, do you see the knock-on effect happening in terms of what Vlad was talking about as well?
Yes, I do. And here's the big thing. Most of these people that are working now, that's employed, are working these seasonal jobs because that's the only thing available. So come January, February, March, this economy growth, or whatever you want to call it, employment growth, it's going to fucking fall off the cliff. And that's where Biden is going to have his toughest thing to do. Yes, he'll be able to open up some of these shops for the PPE, but he's got to go through Congress to do anything as far as the fixing the roads and all that. So I don't think that where we're headed is a good point. And as far as the stock market, by February, I think it'll drop probably 10,000.
Oh, wow. You think it's going to be a correction?
Yes, big time.
Oh,
Okay.
I
Okay.
think there's going to be more than just a correction. I think it's going to
Right.
crash entirely. The stock market right now is like in a weird, optimistic, completely like delusional space
Irrational.
right now. It's only being propped up by tech. And once everybody runs out of money, which is already happening, and people are not buying things, and it'll be interesting to see what happens this Christmas season when sales are going to go down. I mean, there's no way that sales are going to be the same way as they were last year. And when all that market information comes out, like when people realize that people weren't buying those big screen TVs, people weren't buying those big sound systems, they weren't buying that expensive stuff this Christmas season because everybody's downsizing, that stock market probably by January or maybe February, as Charles said, I think it might happen a little earlier.
It's crazy because Black Friday sales were actually up in a lot
They
of
were.
sectors, and
They were, but overall nationwide, I don't think we're going to see the same. People are spending because it's a habit of spending.
Well, I was gonna say this. People are spending now because they haven't been spending for the last 8-9 months as much as they were used to. People had a lot of trips and events that they had planned that they were going to spend money on, and they just didn't.
They didn't. So they had some disposable income.
A lot of people have disposable income, so that is a problem. Now, I do want to circle back because we did put out a question out to our listeners and viewers in our comic section. The we asked, should the states institute rent and mortgage freezes or forgiveness, I'm sorry, because of the pandemic, or should the federal government handle it? And 80% of you said that the federal government should step up, which kind of goes along with the rest of the panel in saying that, hey, this was a federal government issue. We need to make sure we have a clear and concise viewpoint
Right.
on this.
I mean,
Now,
that sounds a lot like communism, though.
now, before we go and address that comment, I do want to address another comment that we had in our comment section. Thank you for engaging with us. We do want to hear from you. And we heard from Anna. Anna said next year, many individuals won't get a salary adjustment for inflation. Companies will use COVID as an excuse in order to not pay people more for next year, cost of living adjustments and things such as that. Kylan, do you see that happening?
I would never doubt corporate America's ability to screw their workers. Um, you know, when 2008 happened, and there was an economic crisis, corporations used that excuse as a reason to either cut salary or not give anybody raises. You know, and they haven't gotten back to giving people regular raises since. They used that as an excuse. And when we talk about just like, voting for taxes or raising taxes and never getting that back, well, corporations cut people's raises and salaries and they never gave it back. So I definitely see them doing that, use that as an excuse. If wages actually kept up with the pace of productivity, the minimum wage would be at minimum $24 an hour. Because the American worker is the most productive they've ever been. The American worker is literally the incarnation of the post office. Neither rain, snow, sleet, nor hail will stop the American worker from slaving on the factory floor. And do we get an appropriate wage for that? No. Do we get appropriate benefits for that? No. You go to an Amazon sweatshop and people get fired for using the bathroom. Their every move, their every second is tracked. We talk about Nike sweatshops in Bangladesh and China. Well, Amazon runs sweatshops right here in the United States of America. They will hold back every penny, to be able to provide the maximum shareholder value, lie to their workers, and pocket as much as possible to make sure that they're not paid a fair wage. And it was so fitting that we had such a great mini podcast this past Tuesday, hosted by our own Daniel Levy, who talked about the importance of collective bargaining of labor unions, because workers are going to continue to be screwed by the corporate elite until workers band together, unionize, and fight for their fair share.
Yeah, we just need to make sure everybody has a similar level playing field. Now, I have a lot of opinions about unions, and I'm not going to go on that because, again, going off topic there. But I do want to ask this to the panel. Is what's happening right now in terms of a relief where basically we have nonprofits taking over the place of where federal government would give aid. Local governments are going in places that would generally the federal government would provide aid. Do you kind of feel like this is kind of like a free marketing of aid, in that it's making people fill in the void that the federal government would usually be there supporting people?
I'll just go 30 seconds on this because I'm not going to rant. But I think that it's not being free market, because the free market isn't free. The free market is the rigged market. Okay. So, that there is no free market. Number one, state and local governments, they have requirement to balance their budgets. They don't have the budget capacity to continue to support these initiatives. And our local nonprofits are already stretched to the brim. We have food service centers and churches and other organizations that are at their limit. They don't have much more food to give out or much more assistance because they're tapped out, and their donor base is tapped out because people are broke. And so the free market, this is not a free market solution that's going to work because the free market isn't free. It hasn't been since Dwight D. Eisenhower.
Jules, Vlad, yeah, Charles, you have anything else to add?
Yeah, I want to add. See, I'm gonna go right back to the top. If the federal government can't provide for the needs of the citizens, then we need a new federal government, which we'll get. But we need everybody to be looking at playing on the same playing field. You can't have this one saying, okay, this is what I want to do, and then the other one hollering about, no, I'm gonna make you one-term president. Because we have too much to lose, and too many people are losing it. You know, I mean, see, I'm at the point now where I can retire. So a lot of the things that would affect some people will not affect me to that point. But I'm not ready to retire. I got 5 more years to just go into work 7 days a week, 7 days every 2 weeks, and make that good money.
Got to make that money there, Charles. Got to make that money. Jules, you got anything?
I mean, I feel like most of what Colin said, I agree with. I mean, we're not gonna be able to recover from this, and if we don't give workers some relief on this, ultimately we are a consumer-based economy, and if workers are feeling stretched, they're not going to buy things, and we're not going to be able, the economy is going to crash. I mean, we're in a situation, as Charles said, that the stock market isn't reflecting what the actual economy is. I feel like we're probably more in lines with a Great Depression than a Great Recession, and it just hasn't caught up yet in terms of the business sector. I think we're pretty well screwed for a little bit.
No,
I'm hopefully, we're gonna have this vaccine that's gonna roll out, and probably by spring we're gonna be a little bit back to normalcy. But I don't see that things are gonna pick up as quickly as that. I mean, it's a pretty technologically impressive thing that we've been able to get a vaccine out this fast. And I can see by your face, I hit your segue. And
so I the reason why I was going to bring up the vaccine, because there's a lot of points to it, and we also ask a poll, and I want to bring that up. But while I bring that up, I wanted to go to Vlad and ask kind of a similar question, because Anna put another comment out on our comment section, and she basically said we asked the consumer that they need to speak with their wallets and not support companies that aren't giving somebody a living wage. But if a company basically is not treating their employees well, we need to stop spending our money there. Do you agree with her on that?
I do agree with her on that, but I think at times it's not possible, because you have a lot of small communities in Middle America where Walmart has moved in and basically crushed any and all, locally owned small business and stuff like that. And also, you have a situation where people don't have enough disposable income to be able to pay what essentially amounts to higher prices at the small family owned shop versus like a Target. So you kind of have situations like that. So in an ideal world, absolutely. I think sometimes it's not necessarily feasible for some people. And Tyler, I also wanted to speak real quick to something that Charles, you had pointed out, that you know, as it stands right now, the federal government has failed the people, and the fact that people have to band together to try to make sure that their neighbor has enough food to eat, or people are starting GoFundMe campaigns to pay for, their rent or their food or their medical bills, is a pathetic indictment of just how poorly the American government has worked or not worked for the people. And I do agree with you, Charles, that we are getting a new government, quote unquote, in just about a month and a half or so. I think that's not enough. I think there has to be legitimate systemic change in order to make the government actually work for people, instead of, like, for all the people, instead of for a select
I agree.
few that it seems to work for right now.
I agree. And also, you know, we're hitting on that about these companies. See, when Walmart moves in, the government needs to stop subsidizing all these big companies that's moving in and taking control and paying their employees peanuts.
Mhm.
See, because actually we're paying them.
Mhm.
The company's just collecting the dividends.
Well, the issue with Walmart too is there's been multiple reports where they move into a community, and during your orientation, they they will hand out, here's your benefits package, here's your employee handbook, and here's your application for SNAP benefits, because you're not going to get paid enough to work for this company. So we might not be directly subsidizing Walmart as a corporation, which we actually are through tax cuts, but we're subsidizing the employees who work for that company by providing them with housing assistance and food assistance and, Medicaid and all kinds of other programs that they are taking advantage of. So, I think honestly, if you can't provide, if you as a business entity cannot provide your employees a decent wage, health insurance, vacation time, sick time, you shouldn't exist as a business.
Yep.
Mm.
Republican economics is horseshit. Republican dogma is horseshit. Republicans love to use the boogeyman of socialism. The biggest socialist parasites are from the Republican Party. Conservative farmers get the most socialism. Corporations get the most juicy socialism. Military subcontractors get the most socialism, and weapons manufacturers. Prisons get the most socialism. We subsidize the oil industry with $8 billion a year in subsidies that go back from the dawn of the Industrial Revolution. We subsidize big agri. We subsidize big pharma in the tune of not rolling back any of their antitrust exemptions. The NFL, for God's sakes, has an antitrust exemption. We socialize horse racetrack owners. We socialize rum producers. We socialize everything except people, except healthcare and workers and people.
Mhm.
Every other segment gets nice, juicy socialism. But Republicans, they get to nationalize it and they can turn it into a boogeyman anytime they talk about helping people. Then it's the socialist boogeyman. But everybody gets socialism who's connected, who has armies of lobbyists to go and advocate on their behalf. The tax system is a smorgasbord, is a fucking orgy of socialism. I mean, they're having a virtual sex party. They get so much.
Well, it's not necessarily virtually; they're actually doing that.
You are right. It is
This is true. This is true.
I mean,
But
tax lobbyists and Republicans and conservatives and corporations, they're in an office somewhere giving each other hand jobs. That's how much socialism they get. See, jizz tax cuts.
and on that note, so like I said, I did bring up the vaccine. A majority of you guys in our thread wanted to take the vaccine as soon as you possibly could. There were some that were hesitant and wanted to wait a little bit, but still were going to take it. There were some that wanted to see what other countries had done, and there was also some that said, "Nah, I'm not feeling it." But a majority of people, I only saw a couple that said that they weren't into it. So that kind of goes into what our next administration is going to do with Joe Biden. Joe Biden will be confirmed as the president. What was it, on the 14th? through the Electoral College. So we only got a couple days left on that. Most states are certifying their elections as we speak. A majority of them have. Joe Biden has over 81 million votes, which is the most of any candidate. But Donald Trump also has 74 million votes, which is the most of any candidate ever. So the get out the vote campaigns, the mail-in ballots, the absentee ballots did get more people to vote, which was kind of the goal. And Joe Biden definitely benefited from that, but so did Donald Trump. As I said before, if you just give people the option to vote, they will vote for the candidate that speaks to them. It doesn't matter if it's a Democrat or a Republican. If the Republican is a better candidate, they will get more votes. It doesn't matter about mail-in votes or anything. But we are in this transition period that was delayed because of Emily Murphy, the GSA. Do we kind of feel like she affected the transition? I want to pose this to Vlad.
Absolutely. She delayed it with without a doubt, but by not releasing those funds and making them available to Joe Biden, the only thing he could do was, kind of announce his some picks for his administration and whatnot, but he couldn't actually get any real work done. So now I feel like now that the funds have been released and things have kind of been certified, it's going to be more of a sprint for the Biden administration to get everything done that they need to get done in order to hit the ground running, the day after inauguration, which is really, really what we need. Especially, we've had 4 years of complete ineptitude, and ever since the election, we've basically had just zero leadership coming out of the White House. Like just we might as well not even have a president right now. So
now that is a good point, because the president, as of right now, hasn't really done too much except for give a couple speeches and throw out a bunch of false information, but not actually
tweet off his toilet.
Yeah, maybe not the toilet, but we'll see. But Joe Biden is at least governing from a position of not power, but from the position of going to have power. So he has been announcing a lot of cabinet positions. But one of the more interesting positions that were announced was his director of office management and budget, Neera Tandon. And Tandon, sorry. I wrote it down weird. I wanted to ask Kylan, our great progressive financier, what he feels about that pick.
Neera Tandon, she's a little too establishment for my blood. Honestly, she's been recycled around quite a bit. She was, a real big supporter of Hillary-nomics and her campaign. I'm not going to hold that against her too much. But it makes me support her just how much Republicans are bitching about her. They literally have the nerve. They have the actual gall with a straight face to say that she's dead in the water and toxic because of the mean tweets that she said about Republicans. I damn near laughed so hard I shit myself. Republicans, they disgust me. Because they have no qualms. They have no level of lowness that they'll go. They have no depths that they won't sink to be full of shit. I actually somewhat look up to it because, come hell or high water, they may be wrong, they may be dumb, they may be evil, but you know what? They do it with strength and balls. If Democrats would just have balls telling the truth and fighting for the American people with policy, they would do a lot better. But Republicans, they'll fight if something's not popular, they're gonna be like, fuck you, we're gonna make it popular. If it's still not popular, fuck you anyway, America. Democrats, we give away the store before we even start negotiations. Our balls shrivel into our bodies before we even hit the negotiating table. It's just a damn shame. But
Yeah.
getting back to Dear Tandon, I really don't have too much of an issue with her. I just think it's comical that Republicans have the nerve to say that her mean tweets are the reason that she's toxic when their damn president has been the king of cyberbullying the past 5 years. And then what the first thing Republicans say is, well, I've been so busy, I didn't even have a chance to see the president's tweet. You'll have to show me that. I don't see it. I haven't heard about that. That's the first I've heard of it. I think that's fake. So, their mental gymnastics, they should go into the Olympics.
So the Olympics are coming up next July on NBC.
Maybe.
But
Maybe.
it's gonna be great. But I hope that some in the Republican Party would like to join in on that. But I do want to ask a question of Jules. Speaking of mental gymnastics, we have a great I mean, I say this with a little bit of sarcasm, White House press secretary right now in Kayleigh McEnany. And she was a Fox News contributor before she became the press secretary. The president-elect, Joe Biden, has put up Jen Psaki as his press secretary, and she was a CNN contributor for many years, actually, and just even recently she was on CNN contributing to some of the election coverage. Do you see it as a strength to have somebody that's been working with news like Kayleigh McEnany? As I tried to say this with a straight face, or do you think he should have chosen someone else than Jen?
I mean, as far as press secretary goes,
Yes.
they're your PR person. You want somebody who knows how to speak properly. You want somebody who knows how to deliver your message to the people. So is it a strength to have somebody from a broadcasting background? Sure, of course. Yeah, they know how to do that. They're absolutely qualified to do that thing. Your press secretary, all their job is to deliver your platform as you have legislated it, as you have written it to the electorate, and say this is our thing. This is how we're going to govern. This is how we want things to go. So do you want somebody who can put a good spin on it? Yeah, absolutely, you do. I think that is a strength. Having somebody from CNN, that's an organization that's traditionally very, it has a left-wing bias to a small degree. It's kind of left-wing light. It's neo-lib news. It's liberal news for the elderly, who don't want to be, AOC level, liberalism. They like the old Bill Clinton style liberalism. That's what they like. So that's what CNN is always delivered to. You can tell it by their ads because it's all about like geriatric medicines. If you watch CNN, all their ads are geriatric medicines. So yeah, it's fine. There's nothing wrong with it. You just want somebody who can deliver the message properly, and somebody who has an experience in that is great.
Definitely want to have good experience. So one last question that I had, and we can leave this for the panel. Joe Biden is also announcing a COVID task force. It is full of 13 physicians and health experts. Do you think that Joe Biden is going to be in a great position to get a handle on things starting in January?
Yes. Number one, he's going to not bullshit around when it comes to utilizing the full authority of the Defense Production Act to manufacture PPE and actually get a supply chain organized. He's going to bring in the military to help with that supply chain management and organization to make sure the vaccines rolled out correctly. He's going to utilize the full extent of his bully pulpit to the best of his ability to encourage people to wear masks and have conversations with the National Association of Governors and the National Association of Mayors to try to get in some protocols to abide by the CDC guidelines. So I think he'll be effective in that. and hopefully he can marshal through some additional, COVID response as far as legislatively, that can help prop up the economy and also provide funding, for additional contact tracing, testing, and rolling out of the vaccine. So I think that he will be successful. And if all else fails, at least we'll have somebody that actually will defer to the scientists, that will trot out the scientists so they can trot out the science, and actually put out a message of truth and fact and empirical evidence, so we can maybe try to somewhat lower the temperature of the tinfoil hat wearing crowd.
Okay. So we'll get through this together. As I said before, we need to work together to get through this, and we can't just think of it as just us, as a selfish thing. So 9 o'clock. It's been a great 2 hours, but I do want to get to our fun topic of the night. I just came up with this earlier. I think it's going to be a really good one. If you were a wrestler, what would your entrance theme song be? I want to start with Vladimir.
Oh God, thank you. Wow, being a lifelong fan of
Yes.
the WWE and having attended a WrestleMania in the past, this question speaks to me.
Yeah.
I would probably go with oh God, For Whom the Bell Tolls by Metallica. I think that would just be a badass entrance song with the kind of the eerie bell going in the very beginning and the slow kind of build up. So that I would probably go with that one, because I mean my all-time favorite is the Stone Cold Steve Austin theme song, and with respect to the great Stone Cold, I can't pick that.
That's a good choice. Great choice. Jules, what would be your theme song as an entrance as a wrestler?
I'm gonna go with "The Sound of Silence" by Simon and Garfunkel.
Are you gonna? To follow a question to Jules, are you gonna go with the original version or the newer, slowed down, more?
That's what I was gonna ask.
Probably the slowed down version, and then I would lose every match.
That hurts. Okay, well, Charles, what would be your choice for an entrance theme song?
The boss is back in town.
Ooh,
Oh,
that's a good one. That's a really good one. Kylan, what would be your entrance theme song as a wrestler? Uh-oh.
okay.
Okay. and for the audience that doesn't know that song, which song is that? For the audience that doesn't know, which song is that?
I am a real American. Fight for the rights of every man. Fight for what's right. Fight for your life.
There it is. There it is, everybody. Kylan Patterson, right there for you. The song that popped into my head, and it just has a great riff. It is Aerials by System of a Down. I love that, and I think that would be a great song to start, because it just starts off and then it just punches you. So yeah, with that, I think we got all of our theme songs in. If you have a theme song, please put it down in the comment section below, or just let us know on our next podcast.
And don't choose one as puny as I did.
Yeah, that's
because that was a joke, but
some people want to come in like a lamb. That's
Yeah, right.
okay.
And then just kick ass, right?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
okay. You lull your opponent to sleep with that. Great job.
Yeah. I just sort of walk in slowly and look down at my feet while I walk in. Old Simon and Garfunkel's playing, and everybody's like, "What the fuck is this guy doing?" And then I just unload.
So hopefully, hopefully we have some great options that come up in the comments. But don't forget to like and share this podcast, like and share our page, comment on all of the articles that we post daily. We post a couple a day right now. So like and subscribe to us, or well, not subscribe, but just follow our page, and we will see you next time in another 2 weeks on our next podcast.
Thanks
See
for
you next
watching.
time.
Thanks for
Bye.
watching.